to be a good leader, first you must serve, first you must love others, and you should love others more than you love yourself. And I think those are kind of the lessons that I take away from Stevens Point that I think are still active at the campus today. Stevens Point had the ROTC program, and they had a great history program that just drew me in, and I really went for it. I always wanted to be a soldier, and I think about the time I was in my junior and senior year, I started to think about being an officer, and my true love was, I think, with the Army even then. UWSP's Russian and East Central European Studies program was formative for me in my early years and remains formative for me today. My favorite history professor was Václav Soroka. He founded the RECES program at Stevens Point, and he's got an incredible life story. It was his emphasis on humanity, on his emphasis on suffering, on his emphasis of what was real in the world. And certainly the Soviet threat was real. Certainly what had happened in Germany in the 1930s was real. And as he brought that to life, it was a striking lesson for me on why we serve, why it's important to have a military, why we need Americans to be focused on preserving this liberty that we have through the Constitution and the way of life that we have.
General Berrier has an historian's heart, and he has this ability to tie the past to the present to the future, which is an extremely important attribute as a military intelligence professional. He's also deployed to Afghanistan and to Iraq, of course, as a senior intelligence officer. So sure, he's put his lifeblood into supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States. So he does know what's at stake for sure.
Our young soldiers and officers are signing up for something much larger than themselves. I want them to very clearly know that what they are signing up for will sometimes be dangerous and sometimes be harrowing. I introduce my family to them, my precious, precious family. I try to instill this notion that they not ever forget their families. I couldn't have done any of this without the family that I have, without my best friend Annie at my side, supporting, coaching, critiquing. We have two remarkable sons. Cole works in the office of Senator Brian Schatz from Hawaii, doing very well there. Connor is a naval intelligence professional currently assigned to the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. Our family has been really lucky, and we're honored to be a part of this, but it does come with sacrifice.
I have seen him in the most difficult of circumstances, and he handles that stress very well. It is good to have somebody that's calm, because when you lose your calm is when other people start to lose their confidence. It doesn't matter what's going on below the surface, because I know him, and inside his guts are churning, but outside, sea of tranquility. It's very important in our business, combat or not, because we deal with a lot of kind of heavy, important issues, I think. So he's really good at that. That's a big strength of his for sure.
I think the biggest thing about General Berrier is he's a real guy. And you can see that in an officer by their ability to speak to everybody from a private first class to the Chief of Staff of the Army, and he can communicate to all of them. I've been in units where the commanding general runs with an entourage of people, or wears a big reflective vest with 2 stars on it. Whereas General Berrier, he's just out there, he's one of the guys. That's kind of his leadership style, where he's out there doing the right thing, and he expects that his subordinate leaders are also out there doing the right thing.
Our motto is always out front, and what that means generally is the intelligence professionals are there first. They're there as the master sense makers of the environment, and they're generally there last as well. What I love about Fort Huachuca is the same thing that brought us here in 1877 is still true today, but it's a little different. At Fort Huachuca today, it's really about the airspace and the testing environment. So the airspace above Fort Huachuca allows us to fly manned and unmanned aircraft at the same time, which really replicates what we do in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan on a daily basis. It's the only place in the country we can actually do that. We train a number of specialties here in aviation. The pilots that get into those airplanes are all going to Iraq or Afghanistan, and we want to make sure that they can be safe, that they can be effective, that the backseaters that are analyzing the information know what they're doing. And so it's an awesome responsibility, and we have to make sure that they know what they're doing so they don't hurt themselves or others when they get into the combat zone. I was not very familiar with different ethnic groups before I went to the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point. Even though I was raised in the suburbs of Chicago as a little kid, I was surrounded by white people. On a farm in central Wisconsin, I was surrounded by people that looked just like us. And the first time I saw any diversity was on the campus at UWSP. Holy cow, what an education that was in and of itself. And I think that has helped me embrace diversity as an Army officer. And I think it's a really important element of our Army. And our Army has been at the leading edge of social change for a very long time because I think we're always the first ones to do it. I went to Stevens Point last summer for the commissioning ceremony. Where we had the commissioning ceremony was in the same room that we had the commissioning ceremony that I participated in 1983. I can't tell you how powerful it was for me to be back there talking to cadets, to parents, to faculty about what it means to be a soldier and an officer and how they've got their entire careers ahead of them and the excitement and how beautiful it's going to be. It was neat. Very great. I'm very grateful for the time that UWSP invested in me, and I'm grateful for the time that I spent there.